We loved every minute of it.
So it's good to see all of you. So,
Well, I have 10 o'clock if you're ready, Miss McCarty.
okay, is anyone else coming on, or is this the group?
They will slowly come in. They
Okay,
always do.
okay, all righty. There's Christopher. He called in. Christopher. So, all righty. What we're going to be talking about this morning, I just wanted to say 38 years ago this morning, I woke up inside a treatment center in LA. I got there the night before. And so yesterday was my 38th OA birthday. Now I've been in in OA since 1972. So from 72 to 85, it took me that long to get in recovery on a consistent basis. And it took me going to treatment. Not everyone has to go to treatment. I had to. I could not get abstinent and stay abstinent with the food. So like I said, 38 years ago this morning, I woke up in treatment. I got there the day before, but I woke up scared to death. And yes, I learned a lot about eating disorders and how to treat them. And actually, I'm glad I went to that particular treatment center because what they did is they did for me what I was doing for the drug addicts, alcoholics every day in the treatment center where I was working. They treated me through the 12 steps, but with a lot of additions and, that's eating disorder specific. And what I learned for the first time was the word codependency. I had never heard of codependency. Now, I had heard about adult children of alcoholics. Claudia Black, in fact, she had became our clinical director at one time. We did it by phone, but anyway, she had just written the first book on adult children of alcoholics, but I had never heard the word codependency. We live in West Texas and everything starts on the east and west coast and moves toward the center, and we're the last to get the info. And so when I got out there, everyone was co-ing someone, like a co-alcoholic, a co-eating disorder person, co-this, co-that. And I learned a little bit about codependency. What I learned was I didn't know anything about it. It was all new. It was, it just blew my mind. And because to tell you the truth, I was knee deep into it. I was a severe codependent, severe off of the chart. And so I just want to tell you that was my real first time to hear about codependency. And actually, the first books were written in the late 70s, early 80s. So this was 1985. So it takes us about 10 years behind. But anyway, that's what I want to talk about today is I don't think we can talk too much or enough about codependency and how it's acted out, not only in individuals, but in the workplace. Oh my goodness, look at those little babies. There's Jenny with one of her babies. So anyway, I got a little distracted. I do have ADD, but anyway. So codependency can carry over into not only individual relationships, but into the family and into the workplace and into our country. Now, I'm not going to go all into that. If you want to know more about how codependency shows up in the workplace, what I would say is get some of Dr. I'll think of it, her name, it just lost anyway, I worked with her in the early days and I'll have to think of her name, but she really focused more on the workplace and on the country, how codependency can interact in any organization, it be church, it be PTA, it be, and so how it does that is when There's codependents trying to run it, untreated codependents trying to run it. So what codependency is, it is a dysfunctional relationship pattern where the person has an excessive amount of focus on someone else, and they give someone else more emotional support than they give themselves. They give someone else more approval. They give their identity to other people. And most of us, and I'm not going to say them, I'm saying most of us that do have had, and we do call it a disease into this in this day, because codependency is much like any addiction, whereas we get addicted to drugs, alcohol, food behaviors, the different substances. But in codependency, we get addicted to other people. And not only addicted to them, but trying to do for them what they need to be doing for themselves. And it looks so long suffering that, bless our hearts, look what we're doing for those people. The majority of codependents, and I came under that category, majority of us did it wanting something back, because so many of us that have any form of addiction had some form of neglect, abandonment, some form of abuse in our childhood. And when we talk about abuse, it's on a spectrum. Not everyone has had severe abuse, but remember, a day in a life of a child is much different than a day in a life of an adult. It doesn't take much for someone to say something, and it's not always parents. It can be school teachers, ministers, the world, coaches. The world is full of people that can say or do something to a child that goes to a child's heart. And what they make up, particularly if they're getting ready to grow up to be addicts, they have sensitive little hearts. Most children have sensitive hearts. So when something is said and done to them, children can take that to heart. They take it in their heart, and it's like that's what they become. And so codependency, we talk about codependency, how we acted out in our adult life. But my friend Pia Melody gave us the information in the late 80s, early 90s. She came up with her first book, Facing Codependence. And I think that was a clarity for me to help me see what adult codependency is, because we get set up in childhood, and that's called codependence. We get set up in childhood for these relationship patterns. And especially if there has been any form of abandonment or neglect. And when children are raised in dysfunctional alcoholic homes, or where there's any addiction, in religion is included in that, any addiction will do. It's where the parent is focused on something else outside the family, outside the child. Yes, we all have to get up and go to work and do our job, but when a parent is focused, if they have their back turned to that child on a regular basis, what happens is those feelings of abandonment and neglect can come in. And like I said, it's on a spectrum. Not everyone has extreme neglect. And if you've had any neglect as a child, it can set you up for adult life to have the disease of codependency. So what it is, it's a relationship problem. It is about trying to get our good feelings about ourselves outside ourselves. If we do enough for someone, if we love them enough, if we care enough for them, they will love us. And a good codependent can find people to be in relationships with that don't know how to be in relationships. And that's what we call an avoidance addict. That'll be the back walking away. That'll be someone that can't really be there emotionally. Now, that couple may be married 50 years, but not really have a real close relationship. And so a lot of times it is the codependency that comes between. And it doesn't just mean, it doesn't mean just in a marriage, in a coupleship. We can get codependent with our children, with our employees, you name it, and codependency can show up. So I want to kind of go over with you about what it involves. It involves enabling behavior. It involves trying to do things for other people that they ought to be doing for themselves. I was extreme codependent, and that was set up in my childhood. My mother was very ill. She was a prescription drug addict and an alcoholic, and she laid on the couch and wore out couches. Now, my mother was smart. She was intelligent. I loved and adored, I worshiped my mother, and I became her mother. And that set me up to be a caregiver. And so my job was to get my mother sober. And all this we make all of that up in our head. It was my job, being the youngest child at home, the only child at home, and my dad was out chasing other women and all that. So it was just really my mother and I. And I gave it my all to get her sober. And guess what? I could not get her sober. And I worked on it till I was 35 years old. And then so when I went out seeking a partner, now we don't know this at the time, but when I went out seeking a partner, guess what who I found? I found someone that needed me as much, if not more, than my mother did. And hot dog, I got to work. I thought, well, I couldn't help my mother, but he has volunteered for this. He has married me, and I don't think he's going to leave me. I'm his third wife. And I always said the third time's the charm. But anyway, I devoted my life to getting him, the first part of our marriage, getting him sober the first 14 years. But thank God I found Al-Anon and stayed in Al-Anon the first 14 years before he ever went to his first AA meeting. So I'm telling you this to say these patterns of caretaking, these patterns of trying to do something for someone else in order to get approval, a lot of times is set up in childhood. Keep in mind, when you hear me talk, a lot of times people will say, well, I wasn't that bad, and so I must not have it because I'm not as bad as she got. It's on a spectrum. It is on a spectrum. So let's go into, codependency and what it looks like, the common signs and symptoms. And those of you that have been here at Shades, we have gone over this. You have written papers, a first step on codependency. When your family came in for Family Week, we went over this with them. But I don't know that we can ever go over it enough. So that's why I chose this topic today. And can we love ourselves? Do we have to give up loving ourselves in order to love someone else? I thought I did. I thought if I did one thing for myself, that I was being selfish and that I was being self-centered. And I will tell you, we teach people how to treat us. I did everything those first years for my husband. I mean, everything except wipe his honey, and I've probably done that. But I did clean up, when he got drunk. I laid out his clothes. He didn't know where he kept his clothes. I laid out his clothes every morning. Pretty much did that for my children. I did everything for my kids. This is in the early days, and I have two daughters on here probably, and they will say, well, she didn't do it forever. Because when I started to Al-Anon, I realized I learned through Al-Anon what I was doing, that I was trying to get love in my feelings of good feelings about myself through doing things for other people. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so when I got into Al-Anon, and I had a good sponsor, and a good sponsor is going to see what you have. You know, we can tell a sponsor one thing, but a really good sponsor likes to show up in your home and really see how you're living, you know. And a lot of times I couldn't go to meetings because I had things to do. You've heard this story, and I'll briefly tell it again, but it hits the nail on the head about addiction, about codependency. So one weekend, my mother was there, my husband, both of them got drunk. It was a horrible weekend. Somehow I got the kids off school, and I had not been to a meeting for a couple of weeks, and I was doing laundry. And I called my sponsor, and I was just crying about the weekend. And she said, "Well, what is that noise?" And I was drying tennis shoes in the dryer, and went da 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 da. And she said, "You know, you only call me when you have a problem. And if you don't meet me at the noon meeting, don't ever call my phone anymore." And that scared me, because that woman, she was my lifeline to some recovery. And she was right. I had not put recovery first, but I'll tell you, I showed up at that noon meeting. She met me at the door. I'd been going long enough. I thought I knew a little something. And she met me at the door, and she said, "You go in, if they call on you, you say, 'I pass,' because you don't have anything to offer anyone else." She was normally a sweet, precious woman, and she was hateful to me because I had bugged her to death, but would not follow directions. So we sat down after the meeting. She got out. She said, "Get in your car and follow me." And I did. And we went to, it was an early day Walmart. It was called Gibson's. It was like like a small Gibson's. It had a little bit of everything. We went back to the laundry section. And at that time, we were raising 7 children. We had a blended family. And my sponsor said, "I want you to pick out a basket and a soap for each one of those kids." I said, "Why?" And she said, "We're going to teach your kids how to do laundry." And I started crying, because I did not want to teach my kids how to do laundry, because if I taught them how to do that, I might not be needed. And if I wasn't needed, I wouldn't be wanted. So she stayed on me. Then following Sunday, we gathered all those kids up. She came out because she didn't trust me. She came out, and together we taught those children how to do their own laundry. Now, the youngest one, we were laughing Sunday about, she loves to do laundry, and her older siblings would bribe her. They would pay her. They would whatever to get her to do their laundry. But nevertheless, I didn't do laundry for my kids. Now, I would if they got in a bind and, you know, they were playing sports and cheerleading and all that. Of course, I would help, but I didn't. They each one learned how to do their laundry, because that's essential in getting kids prepared for the outside world. We need to teach them everything they need to know to get out there to take care of themselves. So one Sunday afternoon, 3 or 4 weeks later, I was in the laundry room doing my husband our laundry. And I looked over in the corner, the laundry room was here, and they were in the kitchen, and all the kids, all 7 of them, were grouped up around my husband, and they were talking. And my husband said, one of the kids, "Well, I don't even know what to call her anymore. She's just not the same since she started going to that meeting." And so my husband said, "Well, I just call her she." And then, no, he didn't. One of the kids said, "I call her she." And one of my older bonus children, the other one, said, "Well, I call her it." And my brilliant husband, he said, "Well, let's just put it together and call her shit." That's what happens in dysfunctional families. I can laugh about it, but that was no laughing matter. And that's really how they felt when I started taking care of myself and putting their responsibilities back on them. Family members don't like it. Your employers, if you in the people that you work with, if you do their work and yours too, and you stop doing that, you're not going to be their new best friend, because you can't buy friendship. Now, it's okay to help. There's a difference between doing everything for everybody and then offering a little help. There's a balance in this. But if you're one of those people at work that know that you can take off on Friday afternoon because Jane is going to cover for you and she'll do all of your work and all of that. If you've got a Jane in your place of business that takes on her work and everybody else's, you've got an untreated codependent in the workplace, and that makes an unbalanced staff. So anyway, let's get into what the signs and symptoms are of the number one sign and symptoms of codependency is low self-esteem. Codependents have a poor self-image, and they base their image off of what you think of them, good or bad. We get our good feelings about ourselves, outside ourselves, and our bad feelings. So self-esteem and self-worth, self-image is usually very low, and that's probably the number one thing that people need to begin to work on. And then another thing is, and we can't say this enough, and we say it all the time, codependents cannot set boundaries. We don't know what a boundary is. We don't know where we start and someone else, where we end, where someone else starts. So boundaries, 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 boundaries. And I will tell you personally, that was the hardest thing for me. And getting into recovery from codependency was setting healthy boundaries. It was very hard for me not to be a caretaker, because that's all I had known all my life. And when I got back from treatment, I'll tell you, when you start in recovery, like I gave you that little scenario about my family not liking me, changing. When I got back to work, I was program director of a drug alcohol center in town. And when I got back with a little knowledge of codependency, I started delegating. I was the only woman there. We treated very few women. All the men were clients. All the staff, all the men, all of the staff were men. All of the clients were men. Everyone, I was the only female there, and I was in charge of the men, and they liked me until I came home from treatment. And after I came home from treatment and I had learned about codependency and how I was doing for them, those male therapists, what they needed to be doing for themselves. And as I began to implement some changes in that workplace, they hated my guts. The clients, I don't know if they hated me, but they really got angry at me. And they would say things, well, ever since you've been out there at that place in California, you're just not the same person. And no, I wasn't. I began to learn how to set boundaries. I began to learn in the workplace how to delegate work. I'll tell you, I was so bad in the workplace. I did not want those male therapists to get angry at me. I was responsible for the state of Texas, and then in a supervisor position, I was responsible for every bit of notes that were taken, every documentation. At the end of the day, I was responsible for that. Not that I had to do it, but I had to see that it was done. Well, if they didn't do it, I would do it. I would do it for them. And they loved me. They loved me. They called me mother after I got back from treatment and I got into setting boundaries. They called me mother, instead of, mother of an endearment, because I started setting boundaries and I started helping other people become accountable for their job and for, the children in the home. And, and for my husband. And one of the things my husband said, and this started in Al-Anon also, he said, ever since you've started for that Al-Anon, you've just become indifferent. You're indifferent. You don't clean the pool anymore. You hire it done. You don't wash my pickup once a week. You don't mow the lawn. He started listing off all the things that I didn't do. And he was dead serious about it. We teach people how to treat us, and I have taught people that I can do it all. I can do everything. And when I quit doing it, it shook the family up. And then later, when I got back from treatment and started applying the codependency to my employees, it shook the center up. But I'll tell you, when I left there, I believe I had implemented some structure that we didn't have before I went to treatment. So, okay, so definitely setting healthy boundaries. And then we've already covered number 3, excessive caretaking. We can just hover. A good codependent knows what somebody needs before they ever need it, and they'll run in and try to rescue them. And what that's really saying to that other person is, you're not capable. If we're running in and rescuing our own children, we're saying you're not capable of doing that, when they really are. And then number 4 is people pleasing. We people please due to the fear of rejection and abandonment. I'll tell you that feelings of being rejected and abandoned. I've never worked with the client yet. I don't care. They might come in and say, well, I just came from a perfect family. I haven't seen a perfect family yet. I've seen some people come out of some pretty good homes. And in spite of that, they showed up at Shades of Hope in their adult life through their own addictions or eating disorders. So that people pleasing, we do that for fear of being abandoned or rejection. And so I probably, and we'll say yes when it's more appropriate to say no. Number 5 is goes right into that, difficulty saying no. I was telling the clients here the other day, my oldest daughter, Karen, I went into the bathroom one morning, and somehow during the night she'd gotten up and had cut out no out of magazines and newspaper, had my mirror covered in my bathroom with no. I instantly knew it was Karen. And I said, what? What's the deal? And she said, because Mother, you never tell anyone no. You stay so busy. I mean, I didn't think Wiley School could run without me up there. I, was president of this and secretary of that and chairman of this. I was up there, and that's how I got my good feelings about myself. I was a human doer instead of a human being. And so I'll tell you, when you let people know that, they will ask you to do all sorts of things. And I couldn't say no. And I would get myself so double booked. I slept maybe 3 or 4 hours a night. I worked myself to death. And that's another thing I had to really look at is work addiction. So number 6 is, and I'm saying this again because it is so important that we do so much of this stuff, this behavior, for fear of abandonment, for fear of being left out of a social circle, or fear of not being, a part of that Sunday school class or whatever. So we overdo for that fear of abandonment. And then, 7, I don't know. I guess I needed you to hear more about boundaries, because number 7, I put down boundaries again. And about boundaries is that, it can be, we can be so enmeshed with other people, can be so enmeshed. And a good codependent will just absolutely put their life on hold in order to be there for that other person. And we get very enmeshed. And we don't do this by ourselves. We know how to choose other sick people. Sickness seeks its own level. Health seeks its own level. And so that that enmeshment to others And what it usually is, a lot of times we'll take on their identity instead of our own. I remember one time, and I feel shame about this. I was about 17 years old and went to some kind of function. And I was so shy and so bashful. It was some kind of church function because I did go to church as a kid. I took myself to every denomination except Catholic. I did go to the Catholic for a little while, but they really wanted me to join up and I didn't. So anyway, I was at some church function and I remember introducing myself by my mother's name. Now, if you don't think that's codependency, instead of giving them my name, I introduced myself as my mother's name. So, because we lose our own identity in codependency. And then number 8, we have difficulty experiencing emotion or expressing emotion, or the other way around. We're either shut down and can't show any emotion, or the way that I was, I'd be shut down 1 minute and then I would be crying and crying and crying the next. I had so much unresolved grief from the past, and I'd get my sensitive feelings hurt and I would cry. So difficulty expressing emotions in a healthy way, whether over or under. And then number 10 is avoiding conflict, even when it's necessary to address a situation. A good codependent is, will be, that can be an avoidance addict, where we avoid anything that's unpleasant. We'll put it off. I'll talk to them about that tomorrow, or I will, I'll handle that tomorrow or tonight or this afternoon or next year or something. But we do not want conflict. And then guess what? We're usually the creators of conflict. We can stir the pot quicker than anyone all the time, not wanting that conflict, but we can. And one of the ways codependents stir the pot is by gossiping. Gossiping is a way of feeling a part of and feeling important. If you've got some dirt or some information about someone, and you go to some kind of social function or something, and you are even one-on-one, and you can spill those beans and and talk that gossip for just a little while, it just gives you some feelings of self-worth, and it is is seeking that external validation, but it's also trying to be a part of. And then I had already gone into avoiding conflict, but we will do that and to be a part of. Okay, so number 11 is over reliance on relationships. We put so much, untreated codependence put so much into relationships, and usually we choose people many times that can't we will give and give and give and give and give, and they don't return that. And that, because that's the type of people we choose, people that are not available, or they're not available emotionally, they're not available physically, and then it keeps us in that cycle of not being a part of and no one loving us at all, because we put so much reliance on a relationship, and we feel incomplete and anxious if we're not in a relationship. We just have to be in a relationship. What I tell people when they come to Shades is, if they're married, I do not push divorce unless you're in an abusive relationship, and you might want to look at that while you're staying and getting abused. But if people are not, if they're married and not in an abusive relationship, what I tell people is stay in that relationship and become different. Learn from the one that to dance with the one that brought you to the party. Because if you leave that relationship too early, if if they're not doing for you what you want them to do, or it's not, and you get your feelings real hurt. And anyway, if you leave that relationship too early, you're going to go out and find the same type of person to be with, because sickness sits its own level. You can't do it any other way. Healthy people do not want to be with sick people. And if you date someone, if they're the least bit healthy, they'll see through your codependency, and they don't want to be around sick people. And so, if you're in a relationship, in a marriage, in a committed relationship, I tell clients, stay in that relationship and become different. And when you become different, then you're going to be free. You're going to be free to go or stay. But either way, when you can stand tall, autonomous with the God of your understanding, and feel good about yourself, then you can either stay in that relationship or go, because you're not going to be there to get your good feelings about yourself. They're going to come from within, not from your partner. And if you're not getting anything out of that relationship, if you're being abused, or you're, for whatever reason, you're not getting anything out of that relationship, after you've learned to take care of yourself and stand tall, autonomous, you might choose to leave that relationship. But we don't tell people to do that. Now, when they come to treatment and they're single and they're not in a relationship, they don't all follow this, but we encourage them. And you go to a 12-step program, and most people in 12-step programs most sponsors will say this. But what we encourage people to give yourself at least 6 months. We really recommend a year before you get into another relationship. Become different, because you're going to attract different people. Learn to know yourself and have that self-love, because if you don't, you're going in there to get something. You're going in there, and then when you don't get it, you're disappointed, you're angry. And so when you can live alone and be okay with yourself, you're ready to be with someone else. And Joseph is shaking his head. No, I don't know, but I know Joseph, and he did not get into a relationship, I'm telling on you, Joseph, until he got really healthy in his own codependency. And I got to see a picture of you and your wife. She is gorgeous. Maybe I don't know if you married over you or what. Anyway, she's gorgeous. I'm teasing you. But anyway, all right. So, and look, when you're in the midst of codependency, I want you to look at how you jump from one relationship to another, from one to another. You either stay in one sick one forever and always, amen, and never change, or you'll go from one to the other to the other. And when you're doing that, what you do, that turns into love addiction. Majority of the time. And what people that are love addicts do, they choose people who cannot be there for them. And that is what revs a good love addict up, is when they find someone that turns their back to them. I mean, that just challenges a good love addict or a good codependent. And it revs them up, because a good codependent just has the feeling that they can change that person. And I'll tell you, until you get past your love addiction and have some really good treatment for it, and treatment for codependency, the best thing you can do is stay out of a relationship. Don't ruin someone else's life just because you're looking. And I'll tell you, you can't ruin somebody else's life. You're going to pick someone that is sick, if not sicker than you are. Okay, so number 12 is when we're in codependency, we have poor decision making, and we neglect self-care. We do not take care of ourselves. So briefly, I want to tell you, so the answer is, do I have to give up loving me in order to be loved by someone else? The answer to that is absolutely no. What happens is a balanced and fulfilling relationship is where both individuals love and support each other. A healthy relationship is like this. Now, this finger is crooked because of arthritis, so I'm not pointing down. Anyway, it's two healthy people standing tall, autonomous, where they can live alone, but they choose to come together. And when you have that kind of relationship, my belief is what's holding them together is the God of their understanding. That God puts people together and can keep relationships together. I don't believe people can't, but when you can stand tall, autonomous with each other, then you can spend your life together. But when you're in a dependent relationship, it's like this. And for someone that's codependent, you can't do this by yourself. You pick people to join you in this dependency. But when you get sick enough, you'll pull out and learn to stand tall and take care of yourself and learn to love yourself. Now, this person will try everything they can to bring you over here. This is the status quo. And this is what the other person is used to. That's what you're used to. And if you're not strong, standing over here, autonomous with you and the God of your understanding and having good support, you will succumb to this. You will get back in this because this is familiar. But if you can stand strong, this one will fall flat on their face and they'll either stand up and get some help, and you can have two healthy people, or they'll go find someone to recreate this with. And then what that gives you freedom to find someone, and you don't have to go out and kidnap them. You don't have to look for them. I believe God will put people in your life that you can stand with. Now, I won't get into online dating. I'm not against that. I am absolutely not. But be careful who you attract on that. And if you are in recovery from codependency, you're going to see the ones that are out for your money or whatever. Anyway, they say when older women get on there, what men are looking for is a purse or a nurse. So be careful when you get on Match.com if you're older. All right. So balanced and fulfilling relationship is where the individuals love and support each other. Because one time, one may need more support than the other one. It's an ebb and flow. So to wind this up, codependency is disease, like I started with, much like addiction. And if you have any of these signs or symptoms, or if you know someone that does, share this information with them. And by all means, get professional help. Get professional help. That's one of the things that we do in the 4-day. It is really, I used to call it breaking free from codependency. And that's what the 4-day is. It's really all about codependency, our 4-day intensive that we have once a month. And I still do that with one or two therapists. So if you really want to see about codependency and how to break free from it, come see us in October. And these, like I keep saying, these traits are usually set up in childhood. That's why it's necessary to go back and look at your past, not to hang out there and stay there forever, but to let go of the past. Let go of the past and look toward becoming what you already are. You already are what you've always wanted to be, and that is precious and free, where God wants us to be free, healthy human beings. And that's what's in the future for anyone that suffers from codependency, but you must do the work. So that's what I have about learning to love yourself. And one of the things, I have a whole list, but I'm going to give you time to talk. One of the things about taking care of yourself is get professional help. Get into a good 12-step program. Learn what healthy is, what unhealthy is. Do some self-care. Look at your calendar and see what your calendar is. Everything on your calendar is about doing something for someone else. codependency too is not being selfish. It's about thinking of self less. You don't just focus on yourself all the time, but you learn to take care of yourself. And when you're taking care of yourself, you have something to offer your family, your friends, your employees, and and people in the workplace that you work with. You have something to offer, but you're not offering them yourself. You're not giving them all of yourself. And look at your calendar. And if I go in right now and look at my calendar, what I've had on my calendar is going to a wedding. I have had on my calendar going to support a friend that has had some problems. But also on my calendar is every Tuesday, I go out with my friend Misty. It's a fun day, but we run errands. But I do that. I set aside a day every Tuesday, and then about every third Thursday, I set aside my daughter, Christy, my youngest daughter, and I spend Thursdays together. And I would do that with my other daughters, but they work every day, and so but we do figure out how we can get together. I don't give myself away. Like I used to, but I enjoy the things that I do. And if I don't enjoy them, I stop doing them. I don't do it. But you'll see all over my calendar, I've got trips planned. By the way, I'm going on a cruise. Would encourage each of you to consider maybe going with us. It's going to be fun. We're going to be talking about all addictions with a primary focus really on codependency and how we get set up for these addictions and we're going to be talking a lot about eating disorders. So we're going to do that the first week in December. But I've got other trips set up. I'm going to go see a friend. I'm going to do this. I want to do that. And before, my calendar was full of taking care of other people. Now, if someone calls and they need me, you bet. I'm going to, if I can, I know how to say no, and no is a complete sentence. And if I can't do something to help someone, I can tell them no. Or if I know that would be enabling them, I'll say, no, I can't do that today. Doesn't mean I can't do it 3 weeks from now, but no, I can't do that. So it's about learning to take care of ourselves. So that's what I have about codependency and learning that it's okay to love ourselves. I'm still big on affirmations. I encourage people to do affirmations daily, and those who do have seen remarkable results. You do them until they have found a permanent place in your brain. So let's open it up. I know I've got some people on this screen that you're in really good codependency recovery, and you're also good, solid in addiction recovery. And if you need some help, speak up. Who wants to talk first? Come on, who would like to speak?
I'll go
Jackie.
first, Tennie.
All righty.
I too didn't know what codependency was until going to treatment there at Shades. And when codependency was explained to me, I truly didn't understand it until I started looking at my motives of why I do things and understanding what my part was in it. And I never understood that before. I was very manipulative, and I used everybody's as a reason why things didn't work the way I wanted them to. But learning when you went through all of those 13 steps of codependency, every one of them I could check off the box with. I remember, just like you, overdoing at the kids' school, at church. I did everything. I got all my feel goods from other people, and every bit of it was from childhood trauma, neglect, some mental abuse on some levels, and some physical probably too. But all of that was, I never felt enough. I never felt good enough. I never felt worthy. I never felt some love that I was seeking. So I could identify with everything that you shared today, because so much of it held true for me with how how codependency impacted my life and then my children's lives. So when I got into recovery, what I have found is such a difference in balance and calmness to myself. Prior to codependency and trying to get all my feel goods from others, one thing you said really rang true. When you start instilling boundaries, the sick ones in our lives don't like it because it impacts them in a not so great way. And I found that when I started instilling boundaries, all my relationships changed, but they changed in a better way. They changed in a way that was healthy for me. And they changed, and my motives changed as to why I would do things. And like you today, I have that one component that I felt is really care, which is the self, really difficult to do, which is the self-care. I no longer neglect myself. I'm able to take care of myself and instill boundaries with my work schedule, with my family members, with what have you, so that I can have a nice balance with my spouse and with fulfilling, those fulfilling relationships. And working Al-Anon is really getting a sponsor, working the steps and looking at my motives and looking at all my part really helped me understand so much of it. So I recommend, if you don't have a sponsor, that you find one, you get one, you put your, I hate to use a bad word, but ass in the seat, because that's really what it's all about. Get in the rooms, go to the meetings, do your work. And I've learned so much from the women in the room. So, and men. And I'm very grateful that you brought codependency awareness into my life, because I got all my feel goods from others. And today I feel like I genuinely feel good from inside. And that's been a blessing. So thank you, Tennie. And thank you all. And
Thank
everybody,
you,
Shades, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. So Christopher has his hand up. You know anything about codependency, Christopher?
I know a little bit. When I read Pia's book after attending treatment, I kind of I identified with her anti-dependent model,
Mhm.
where it's the I don't need anybody or anything, but I'm giving all of myself everywhere to everybody else. And that resonated with me a lot, in my relationship with my spouse, and going the extra. What I've found is going the extra mile in one area of my life, perhaps my home or my work, and really trying to make a difference does make a difference. But what became is I was going the extra mile at home. What seemed to me, looking back, seemed to me that I would come home from work and then I would be helping to make dinner, and then I'd be helping to get the kids in bed. And at work, I would be accepting assignments and helping everyone with everything and being the go-to person. And I became resentful in both of those areas. I became resentful that instead of looking at the manual for a piece of equipment, or looking at the specifications for some piece of hardware that we were working on, people would just come ask me. Well, I read the manual. I mean, I wasn't anything special. It became very frustrating, and I started to be angry with my managers and with some of my coworkers and with my spouse, and realized that even though I had some strict time boundaries about what I would spend at work, I didn't have very good boundaries about my responsibilities, either at work or at home. And at the time I got married, I was an unknown and untreated sex addict, with only one sexual partner, which entirely overwhelmed her. And her codependence was, well, this is my role, because I'm the spouse, and so I need to provide sex, and that put a huge barrier, because I was looking to her to provide what I needed in terms of emotional stability, and she didn't know any different. And so, often actually, I found that we would be intimate together, and then I would go to the kitchen and have dinner again, because I was still lonely, because we hadn't actually connected, because she was codependently trying to meet my need, and I was codependently looking for her to do so. Man, it was a tangle. It was a tangle, and we've been able to sort all that out. I appreciate the reminder today that I am a codependent, recovering codependent, and thanks for your words today, Tennie.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for that is so true about when we're not getting our needs met on the inside. Food is always there. Food is always there. And that's, that's where that food addiction can come in. Thanks for sharing, Chris. Deb, I know you've done a lot of work on codependency. You have anything that you could add? I know you do.
First of all, thanks for the topic. It's always great to get it revisited. And I first heard the term when I'm sitting in the conference room at Buffalo Gap. We were there for Family Week when we went around, and they, you said, give your names, claims, whatever, which I didn't know what any of that meant, but 3 people went before me. So I figured it out, and I said, hi, I'm Debbie. I'm a compulsive overeater. And you yelled up, and a codependent. It's like, what? What is she talking about? And I thought, what has my daughter been saying about me? Again, I also saw you were small and mighty, so I said, and a codependent. And then we went on, I went back to the hotel and looked it up. And man, oh man, did that it started. So I'm grateful to you because I truly hadn't heard the concept. However, I realized I started way back at 18 months old. I got all my feel goods for helping my parents. We had 5 kids, they had 5 kids in 6 years. So my whole life I was trained to do that, and I jumped right in. So I've learned a ton about it. I got a great sponsor who has lots of experience with shades and really helped me see things so differently. Saw the damage I've done to the people I love the most, all under the guise of thinking I was helping them so much.
Would you say that, Dad? Would you say that again? That last.
Well, I was able to see all the damage I have done to the people that I love the most under the guise of thinking I was helping them every moment.
Yeah.
And I did create children that didn't do for themselves what they could. But I also have fallen victim to what you clearly talked about. Not everybody in our family has chosen recovery, and the ones that haven't are not happy with me that I have. And it's 4 years into it. And I have one daughter especially. She asked me Monday, where are you going? I said, I'm going to my Al-Anon meeting. And I literally 4 years later thought her eyeballs were going to fall out her head. She was rolling her eyes so much. And it's like, girl, just stop, So but that has just made me steadfast. And rather than being angry with that, I realized I've got to take responsibility for creating that. I made them want me and need me, that I can't now be really harsh when they don't want me to give that up. But I am, and they're just going to have to get over themselves. So I love Al-Anon. It's been great. And, just thanks for keep educating us. I've heard this over and over from you, and I learn, and it just reinforces my heart each and every time. So thanks.
Thank you, Deb, and just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I know that you work a good program. I mean, I know that, and I'm glad you took what you learned at Shades, and then because that's just one step, but you took it home with you, and from that point, I mean, and you're here every Wednesday, unless you're on a cruise.
That's true.
Will join us on the cruise in December. All righty, who's next? We've got some time.
Tennie, it's Sally.
Hi, Sally.
Maybe for another time, could you explain the differences between codependency and love avoidant? Because to me, it kind of all comes together. So that might be a topic for another day. I don't know.
Okay.
Am I making any sense? Probably not.
You are. No, you are. Well, a good codependent usually gets engaged with someone that is the love avoidance, and and keep trying to help the person, like we call the back walking away. And a good codependent just knows that they can make them turn around and be in a relationship with them. If they love them enough, if they do enough for them, if they care enough, that, that avoidant one of these days is going to turn around and realize how much they're loved. And guess what? They probably won't, and this is where the love in early recovery has got to go to ourselves. And even saying that can feel selfish, but that's what it has to start with us. We've got to learn to take care of ourselves and have some self-love before we have anything to give to anyone else. And we can hold those people loosely. We don't have to just avoid avoidance addicts, but just know that you're not going to have a deep relationship with an avoidance addict unless there's some change within them. So we'll
Because
just
I know that for me, I never really heard the term codependency really used in my vocabulary till I went to Shades, and I realized where with just within my family, I wish, that my father hadn't passed on my mother, so that I could change some things because of being so codependent on them.
yeah,
And so one of the things with working the relationship with my brother is I didn't realize how codependent I was of him. And so I've had to completely change my tune. So I thank you very much for the topic and talking about it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Sally. Let's see, where did Angie go? Is Angie off? Okay. Brad, do you have anything? I know you're hiding back there behind your name. Bradley.
I'm here. I don't, just an interesting question I wanted to pose. As a clinician that works with individuals, I can set strong boundaries, but was recently helping a friend and been helping a friend for the last 6 months with his alcohol use. And so getting the call that he is at a local bar and is drunk. And so trying to decide, it's a Friday night, what to do. Another friend and I were really trying to find what to do. We were literally having the discussion, do you go flatten his tires? Do you go let all the air? We were let all the air out of his tires. What do you do? Because we have tried, went to treatment, the cycle. And as a clinician, I can say, that's not that's a strong boundary. But when they're a friend, I don't know where that fits in with this conversation, because I've really struggled with that over the past few weeks, because we ended up not doing anything. He ended up getting a DWI. He ended up going to treatment 2 days later. And so, of course, no one was injured, but of course I can say, oh, that was the right decision. But then what if he had injured someone? What if he had wrapped his car around a van full of family? And so I have really struggled with that over the last couple of weeks, because I want to say, I set good boundaries, but then at what point are the boundaries too strong? Pose that, because I don't know if I have a good answer for that. It turned out well. God worked that in probably the best way possible, and hopefully this will encourage him to do that. But I don't know if I would have been able to live with myself. But if he had wrapped himself around a van full of family as we were trying to set strong boundaries, where does that fit in this discussion? We'll close it out on an upbeat note.
I know that you know this because you've been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Majority of the time we wait for them to ask for help. We're here, we're willing to help. And you were aware that he was, I don't know how you knew that he was in the bar. I think you did the right thing, and it is very difficult to know when to go and when not to go, and when in doubt, don't. When in doubt, just don't do anything. And it did turn out. It did turn out. And a lot of times until any addict feels the pain of their disease, regardless of what it is, until they feel it at the very depths. And sometimes it takes waking up in jail. It takes, waking up in prison. We don't know what it takes, but I'll tell you, some of the strongest members of the fellowship that I have ever known have found God inside a penitentiary and federal, state penitentiaries. And if someone had gone in and rescued them, who knows what would have happened. So I think you did the right thing. And if, we never know, but God knows, and he knows your heart. And, my take is to give them the best letting alone that they've ever had. Leave them alone. The disease has got to do its work, is my belief. So, I hope that helps. And I want to ask, because I know this man has worked on codependency since the day I met him. Trey, what do you have on codependency? Trey, are you there? Well, I guess Trey has gone south. So, all righty, I think is our time up?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, so join us next Wednesday. What was the time?
Well, we haven't completely decided.
The what?
The one about my,
Okay, we're working on the title. We're not quite there, but stay tuned. We will, I use we very loosely. Misty and Cam will put it on Facebook and let you know what the topic is. And if you have a topic that you want us to talk about, nothing's off the table. We'll talk about anything. So let me know. Just send Cam an email and let her know, and we'll tackle anything. So y'all have a very good week, and thanks all of you for showing up. And you might invite somebody to join us next week. All righty. See you
God bless
Wednesday.
y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tennie.
Bye, Tennie. Love you.
Bye, Cam.
Love
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.